I've always considered myself a simple guy, content with a steady job and a quiet life. My dad taught me the value of hard work from a young age, and I learned the ropes of welding from him. Sure, it wasn't the most glamorous profession, but I took pride in my work. I didn't need much, just a job I could enjoy and someone to share life with. For a long time, that person was Emily, my high school sweetheart. I thought we'd be together forever. But, as life has a way of doing, things didn't go as planned. We had big dreams and so much hope, but the reality of marriage hit us hard. I was working long hours, often out of town, while Emily was going through college. I paid her tuition with the money I earned, thinking everything between us was solid. But little cracks started showing, and soon enough, our marriage was falling apart. I still remember one night, driving down the highway with the radio on, trying to block out the thoughts that kept creeping in, thoughts of Emily, of what went wrong, of the betrayal I couldn't seem to escape. I even tuned in to some talk show about UFOs, anything to distract me from the mess my life had become. But it wasn't just that I left her, I ran. I ran from the pain and the betrayal that still stung deep inside. Let me rewind a bit. I'm Mike Thompson. Emily and I were married for 5 years, high school sweethearts who rushed into marriage, thinking love alone would be enough to get us through. Turns out, I was wrong. Money was never an issue. I've been welding since I was a kid, breezed through welding school right after high school, and started working immediately. I even took up underwater welding, which paid well, enough to cover Emily's college expenses and help her graduate debt-free. Now she's a paralegal at a big downtown law firm. So, why am I speeding down the freeway in the middle of the night, trying to outrun my thoughts? It all comes down to Emily and the company she started keeping. She used to be sweet, someone I'd give everything for without hesitation. I paid for her education despite her parents doubting me, thinking I'd end up broke. But I proved them wrong. She graduated without owing a dime, thanks to me. The trouble started when she began working at Macmillan and Fields. At first, everything seemed fine. But then, her co-workers got into her head. It started small. She'd go out with them once a week, which didn't bother me. But then it became twice a week, including Fridays, which were supposed to be our date nights. When I mentioned it to her, she brushed it off, saying we could just move our dates to Saturdays and that she deserved time with her friends. Fine. I tried to be understanding. But then her nights out got later and later, and I noticed that my calls would go straight to voicemail. Eventually, I had to confront her. It was a Saturday morning, and I just came out with it. I asked her about her late-night outings and if she was seeing someone else. She denied it, of course, saying they were just grabbing food after drinks. I told her that her late nights had to stop. She promised me she would. For a few weeks, things seemed better. But soon enough, she was back to her old habits. I started getting suspicious and, feeling a bit paranoid, installed a phone tracking app on her device. I felt guilty for invading her privacy, but something wasn't right, and I needed to know. One Friday, I followed her to a bar, and there she was, sitting with a group of people, laughing with one guy who was a little too friendly for my liking. Worse, she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. When I confronted her, she made some lame excuse about not wanting to lose it, but her explanation didn't sit well with me. One of the guys, a smug dude named Derek, introduced himself and had the nerve to tell me he was just about to ask Emily to dance. I looked at her, asking if that was true, and she just nodded. Fine, I thought, maybe if I let this play out, I'd find out more. I told her to go ahead, but made it clear I'd be watching. While they danced, I sat down in Derek's seat and ordered a beer. That's when one of Emily's co-workers, a woman named Lisa, leaned over and told me I didn't own her. I asked who she was, and she proudly told me she was mentoring Emily at the firm. I didn't like her attitude one bit, especially when she said Emily needed to broaden her horizons. It wasn't hard to read between the lines of what she was really implying. I fired back, saying Emily didn't need to broaden her horizons by being disloyal to her husband. Lisa just smirked and said Emily might come back to me with some new experiences. I was fuming, but I managed to keep my cool. I didn't trust Lisa or this whole situation, but I hoped Emily would see sense. After all, she'd promised me she wasn't cheating. That night, I drove home, my mind spinning with doubt, wondering how much longer I could keep pretending everything was fine. A few weeks passed after that night at the bar, and Emily seemed to settle back into our routine. She stayed home on Fridays again, and I made a real effort to show her I cared. I figured if I could be more present and attentive, maybe we could get back to what we used to be. For a while, it worked. But deep down, I still felt uneasy, like something was brewing beneath the surface that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Then came one Friday night. I came home from a long day at work and noticed the house was unusually quiet, except for the soft glow of candlelight coming from the dining room. I smelled something delicious, lasagna, my favorite, and thought maybe Emily had planned a special night for us. The table was set with our best plates, and when I turned around, there she was, dressed in one of the shortest, most revealing dresses I'd ever seen her wear. It highlighted her legs, which she knew I loved, and the dress was completely backless. She walked over, wrapped her arms around me, and kissed me like she hadn't in a long time. "Do you like what you see?" she asked, her voice soft but full of a strange energy. "Definitely," I replied, a little confused by the sudden change in her mood. "Good," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Tonight's going to be special. It's a surprise." I went to clean up, thinking maybe this was her way of apologizing, of trying to reignite what we had lost. When I came back to the dining room, the lasagna was already served, and she had poured us both some wine. The candlelight flickered, and I couldn't help but admire how beautiful she looked, even if something about the night felt a little off. I sat down and complimented her, telling her I didn't know what looked better, her or the lasagna. She laughed, but there was something forced about it. As we started eating, I felt a strange sensation come over me, dizziness, like the room was spinning. I tried to shake it off, but it got worse. I attempted to stand, but my legs felt like jelly. I looked at Emily, barely able to get the words out. What's going on?" Before I knew it, I collapsed onto the floor, my head spinning as everything went dark. When I came to, I was in our bedroom, but something was very wrong. I was tied to a chair, my arms and legs bound tightly with zip ties. Worse yet, there was some strange device around my waist, and I realized with horror that I was trapped. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled against the restraints, shouting, "Emily! What the hell is going on?" She walked in a moment later, but she wasn't alone. Lisa was with her, the same woman from the bar, the one who had been pushing Emily to broaden her horizons. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice filled with rage. "Let me out of this chair." Lisa spoke calmly, like she had rehearsed this. "No, Mike. It's better if you stay right where you are. That way, you can watch your wife expand her horizons." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had drugged me, tied me up, and now they expected me to watch as Emily cheated on me? I thrashed against the restraints, my anger boiling over. "You did this, Emily? You went along with this?" She wouldn't look me in the eye, but finally muttered, "I'm sorry, Mike. But it's not what you think. It's just a one-time thing. It won't change how I feel about you. Marie said it's just to help me. Help us." I was furious. "Help us? How is this supposed to help us? You know what this means. You know I can never forgive you for this." Before I could say anything else, Lisa stepped forward and gagged me, cutting off my protests. "You'll stay quiet now, Mike," she said. "There's nothing you can do. It's already too late." I struggled, shaking my head, trying to yell through the gag, but it was useless. No matter how hard I fought, the zip ties held me in place. Lisa and Emily stepped aside, and suddenly, Derek, the same guy from the bar, walked into the room, along with another man I didn't recognize. They both had smug looks on their faces as they saw me tied up and helpless. "Looks like the loser is ready to watch," Derek said with a smirk. He sauntered over, punching me hard in the face, then again for good. Derek's punch landed hard, and I could feel the blood running down my face. I tried to yell through the gag, but the pain and rage swirling inside me made it impossible to think straight. Emily screamed at Derek to stop, reminding him they had agreed not to hurt me physically. "He ruined my pants last time," Derek sneered, "so I owe him." He turned his focus back to Emily, commanding her to get on her knees. I watched in horror as Emily hesitated, but eventually she did what he asked. She took off her underwear and handed them to Derek, who sniffed them before throwing them in my direction. The other man sat back, watching as Emily knelt in front of Derek. I wanted to turn away, but I was zip-tied so tightly to the chair that I couldn't move. All I could do was sit there, gagged and bleeding, as my wife began to cheat on me right in front of my eyes. Derek taunted me while it happened. "Your wife's pretty good at this, Mike. Better than you, huh? He said, laughing as I struggled harder against the restraints. I thought I would pass out from sheer anger, but there was nothing I could do to stop them. Lisa stood nearby, recording everything on her phone with a satisfied smile on her face. Emily didn't stop there. After she was done with Derek, she moved on to the other guy, all while Lisa and Derek laughed at my helplessness. They were making a mockery of my marriage, of my life, and there I was, completely powerless to stop it. Eventually, Derek led Emily to the bed, ready for what he called the main event. I closed my eyes, unable to bear watching the woman I had loved since high school betray me in the worst way possible. But even with my eyes shut, I could hear everything, the sounds of them together, Emily's moans, Derek's disgusting comments. It felt like everything I thought I knew, everything I had worked for, was crumbling to dust right in front of me. I'd heard stories about men who got off on seeing their wives with other men, but all I felt was a deep, seething hatred. I hated Derek. I hated Lisa. And for the first time in my life, I felt something close to hatred for Emily too. She wasn't the woman I had married anymore. They continued for what felt like hours, but I couldn't bring myself to look. When it was finally over, Derek and the other man walked over to me, mocking me. "Did you enjoy the show, Mike?" Derek sneered, laughing in my face. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, they both unzipped their pants and started peeing on me, covering me with their filth while Emily watched from the bed, her face a mixture of guilt and indifference. "Say anything and I'll make your life hell," Derek warned, his voice low and menacing. "From now on, your wife is mine. I'll do whatever I want, whenever I want." When they were done, Lisa calmly walked over, removed the gag from my mouth, and cut the zip ties. "Don't cause any trouble, Mike," she said with a smirk, "or it'll get worse for you." She turned to Emily and instructed her to let me loose once they were gone. As they left the room, Emily cut the final ties and unlocked the strange device they had put on me. She stood there, her eyes filled with regret, but I didn't want to hear her apologies. "Mike, I'm sorry," she started, her voice shaky. "It was just one night. It didn't mean anything. I wasn't buying it." "You know what this means, Emily," I said coldly. "We're done. I can't forgive this." I quickly grabbed my clothes, ignoring the pain from the punches and the humiliation of what had just happened. She tried to stop me from leaving. "Please, Mike, don't press charges. I don't want to go to jail," she begged. I dialed emergency services right in front of her, explaining that I had been drugged, assaulted, and illegally detained. Emily's face went pale when she realized I was serious. She scrambled to find her phone and keys, but I blocked her from leaving. "You're not going anywhere," I told her firmly. "The cops are on their way. Trust me, jail is the safest place for you right now." Emily tried one last time to plead with me. "Mike, you don't know them. Derek and Lisa will come after you if you go through with this." I didn't care. "Get dressed. The police will be here soon," I said, refusing to look at her as she stood there, trembling. Within minutes, the police arrived. They could tell right away that something was seriously wrong. One officer took my statement while another questioned Emily in the bedroom. When they finished, they brought her out in handcuffs, her face streaked with tears. She cried, begging me not to let them take her away. "It was just a mistake," she sobbed. "Please, Mike, don't let them arrest me. It wasn't supposed to be like this." I couldn't even look at her. I just shook my head and turned away. More officers arrived, followed by an ambulance to check me out. They collected evidence, took photos of my injuries, and recommended I get blood and urine tests at the hospital to see what drugs had been used on me. I agreed, knowing that every piece of evidence would help. As they led Emily away in handcuffs, a female officer informed me that she was being arrested for illegal detention, assault, and sexual misconduct. At that moment, I knew there was no going back. Our marriage was over. After the police left, I was taken to the hospital. The paramedics checked me over, and I was still in shock, numb from everything that had just happened. At the hospital, they took blood and urine samples to figure out what I had been drugged with. While I was there, an assistant district attorney named Karen reached out to me. She introduced herself as the prosecutor handling my case. "Mike Thompson?" she asked as she entered the hospital room where I was waiting. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, my voice tired and hoarse. "I'm Karen Lewis. I'll be the assistant DA working on your case." "How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone professional but kind. "I've been better, but I'm okay," I said, shrugging off the pain. I didn't want to dwell on it. Karen sat down next to me and went over the situation. She explained that Emily, Derek, and Lisa had all been arrested, but because they had connections through Emily's law firm, there was a chance they might be released on bail soon. That news hit me like a punch to the gut. How can that even be possible after what they did? I asked, feeling the anger bubbling up again. Karen sighed. It's not fair, but the legal system can be influenced in ways that benefit people like them. I'm going to request a protection order for you, but there's no guarantee it will keep them away. I nodded, trying to absorb everything. So, what now? Well, for now, they'll be in jail until Monday. After that, we'll see if the judge lets them out on bail. I'd advise you to stay somewhere safe, maybe even out of town for a while, just to be cautious. I understand. And yeah, I'm done with Emily, I added, the reality of my marriage ending sinking in deeper. I'm filing for divorce as soon as possible. Karen gave me a sympathetic look. I don't blame you. I'll keep you updated on the legal process and anything new that comes up. If you have any questions or need help, don't hesitate to call. I thanked her as she left, then let the hospital staff finish up their checks. A few hours later, my parents came to visit. They had heard the news and rushed over to see me. My dad was furious. "What are you going to do, Mike? Are you really going to let her get away with this?" "I'm divorcing her, Dad," I said firmly. "I've made up my mind. There's no fixing what she did." "Good," he replied. "You deserve better than that." My mom was more gentle, clearly heartbroken over the whole situation. "I'm so sorry, honey. If you need anything, you know we're here for you." "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it." After a while, my parents left, and I sat there, alone in the hospital room, reflecting on how my life had taken such a drastic turn. Emily's betrayal felt like a weight on my chest that I couldn't shake. As much as I wanted to move on, I knew the next few months were going to be a legal and emotional battle. A couple of hours later, I was discharged, and my dad came to pick me up. He helped me back to my apartment, which the police had thoroughly searched for evidence. Everything felt different now. The place didn't feel like my home anymore. It was just a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. When we arrived, my dad noticed a message on my answering machine. He played it, and a chilling voice came through, "Dead meat." I recognized the voice immediately. It was Derek, or at least a recording of him from one of those cheesy Rocky movies. But the message was clear. They weren't done with me yet. Then, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked through the peephole. It was a woman, someone I recognized vaguely from Emily's office. Hesitant, I cracked the door open slightly. "Yes?" I asked cautiously. "Are you Mike Thompson?" she asked, her voice soft but nervous. "That's me," I replied, keeping the door chained. "I'm Holly Bennett. I work with your wife. Can I come in? I need to talk to you." "Are you alone?" I asked, glancing behind her for any signs of trouble. "Yes," she said, looking around nervously. I unchained the door and let her inside, though I wasn't sure what to expect. She looked scared, like she was carrying a heavy burden. "What can I do for you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Without a word, she handed me a manila envelope. I took it, glancing at her before opening it. Inside were photographs of a dead man, his hands tied behind his back. My stomach twisted as I stared at the images. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice tense. "That's my husband, Brian," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "He worked at the same firm as Emily, Derek, and Lisa." "Did you report this to the police?" I asked, feeling the weight of the situation deepen. "Yes, but they ruled it a suicide," she explained, her voice shaking. "The firm we work for has too much influence. They own part of the police force and have connections with judges. They covered it up." The implications of what she was saying hit me like a freight train. Did Derek have anything to do with this? I asked, my mind racing with the possibilities. "I don't know for sure, but it's possible," Holly replied. "My husband tried to fight back against them, and now he's dead. So, why are you still working there?" I pressed, realizing that Holly wasn't just another employee. She was tangled up in something far darker than I had imagined. "I don't have a choice," she admitted. "I'm not just a secretary. I've been forced to do things for them. Things I can't get out of. And Emily? I asked, dreading the answer. She was being groomed, Holly said, confirming my worst fears. I found a note tucked inside the envelope, written with letters cut from a magazine. Back off, or this could be you. Did you read this? I asked, showing her the note. No, she whispered. It was dropped off at my apartment this morning with instructions to hand-deliver it to you. You should testify to the DA, I said, knowing this could be the break Karen needed to take down the entire operation. No, Holly said, her voice trembling. I want to stay alive. You don't understand how dangerous these people are. I realized then just how deep this went. It wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was bigger than that, bigger than anything I had ever dealt with. After Holly left, I called Karen and told her about the envelope and the message. She was shocked, but also determined. This changes everything, she said. Bring it to me right now. I knew I needed to get out of town. I left the apartment with a bag packed for a few days, unsure where I was going to end up. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there anymore, not with the threat of Derek, Lisa, and their crew looming over me. I grabbed a few essentials, some clothes, cash, and a few tools, then drove straight to Karen's place to drop off the envelope and the photographs Holly had given me. Karen met me at her apartment, and her reaction to the photos was immediate. This explains a lot, she said, studying the images and reading the threatening note. These people are involved in something much bigger than we thought. I handed her Emily's phone, which I had taken during the incident. I grabbed this from Emily. I'm not sure if it'll help, but maybe there's something in it. I'll have someone go through it, Karen said, taking the phone. But I think it's time to involve the feds. If what Holly says is true, we can't trust the local authorities. I nodded. I agree. It's too risky staying here. I need to get out of town for a while, lay low. Karen looked at me, understanding the gravity of the situation. Let me know where you end up. I'll keep you updated on any developments. After leaving Karen's place, I withdrew as much cash as I could from the bank and kept a close eye on my surroundings, looking for anyone who might be following me. The thought of what happened to Holly's husband kept haunting me. I knew I could be next if I wasn't careful. That night, I called an old friend of mine, Dave. He had worked with my dad and had always been like an older brother to me. If there was anyone I could trust, it was him. Hey, Dave, it's Mike, I said when he answered the phone. Mike, it's been a while, man. What's going on? Dave's voice was as gruff as I remembered. I've got a bit of a situation. Think I can crash at your place for a few days? Of course, Dave said without hesitation. Grab some beer on your way, and you're good to go. Relieved, I hit the road, making a quick stop at a convenience store to pick up beer and a few supplies. Dave lived out in the country, which was perfect, isolated and far away from the chaos I was trying to escape. When I arrived at Dave's place around 2:30 a.m., he was waiting for me on the porch with a beer in hand. You look like hell, he said, half joking, but with concern in his eyes. Yeah, it's been a rough few days, I admitted, handing him the six-pack I'd picked up on the way. As I walked inside, I saw his sister, Melissa, coming down the stairs. I hadn't seen her in years, and I barely recognized her. She had grown into a confident, attractive woman, nothing like the shy girl I remembered from back when we were younger. Mike, she said, surprised. What brings you here? Long story, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. Lucy and I. Well, things have gone off the rails. Dave ushered me into the living room, where I explained the whole situation. Emily's betrayal, the incident with Derek, Lisa, and Holly, and the threats that followed. As I spoke, I could see the disbelief and anger in their faces. Damn, man, Dave finally said. That's a hell of a mess. Do they know where you are? I don't think so, I said. But I don't want to take any chances. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, Dave said. We've got plenty of space, and you're off the grid here. They won't find you. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, I said, feeling a bit of the weight lift from my shoulders. The next few days at Dave's place were a much-needed escape. Melissa and I spent time catching up, and it felt good to be around people I could trust. I also spent time with Dave, helping out in his shop and trying to keep my mind off everything. But despite the peaceful surroundings, I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over yet. Sure enough, trouble found me. One afternoon, Dave had gone into town, and I was in the shop working on some metal fabrication when I heard a vehicle pull up. I peeked through the window, and my stomach dropped. It was Derek, Lisa, and 2 other men I didn't recognize, all piling out of an SUV. They had found me. Before I could react, Derek was at the door, gun in hand. "Thought you could hide from us, Mike," he sneered, stepping inside with a smug grin. Behind him, Lisa and the others followed, weapons drawn. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. "You should have stayed quiet," Derek said, his voice low and menacing. "Now, we're going to settle this once and for all." Just as Derek stepped closer, a shot rang out from behind the house. Derek's face twisted in shock as he dropped to the ground, a bullet hole clean through his head. Lisa screamed and ducked as another shot hit one of the other men square in the chest, dropping him instantly. The other man panicked, scrambling to find cover, but it was too late. Another shot echoed, and he crumpled to the ground. I turned to see Melissa standing behind the house, rifle in hand, her eyes cold and focused. She moved with a quiet, deadly precision, taking control of the situation before any more damage could be done. Lisa, now alone, was trembling. "Please, don't shoot," she cried, dropping her weapon. Melissa didn't lower her rifle. "Get on the ground," she ordered, her voice steady and controlled. "Now." Lisa obeyed, lying face down in the dirt as Melissa kept the rifle trained on her. I was still in shock, barely able to process what had just happened. "You okay?" Melissa asked, her eyes never leaving Lisa. "Yeah," I managed to choke out, still shaking from the encounter. "I can't believe you just did that." Melissa gave me a half-smile. "Don't worry, I've got your back." We waited for the police to arrive, and when they did, it was clear from the scene that Melissa had saved my life. The sheriff listened to our story and quickly pieced together what had happened. Derek and his crew had planned to eliminate me, but Melissa had put an end to it before they could act. Lisa was arrested, and the police quickly gathered the evidence needed to tie her, Derek, and the others to the larger criminal enterprise they had been running. With Karen's help, Lisa and everyone involved in the firm's corrupt activities were finally brought to justice. Emily's role in everything was exposed during the investigation, and she, too, was charged and sentenced for her part in the crimes. As for me, I moved on. I finalized the divorce with Emily, and thanks to the evidence of her crimes, I didn't owe her a penny. I sold the apartment and started a new chapter of my life, one without the betrayal, pain, and chaos that had consumed me for so long. Melissa and I grew closer after that day. She had saved me, not just from Derek and his thugs, but from a life I no longer recognized. We spent more and more time together, and soon enough, something real and meaningful developed between us. After everything I had been through, it felt like a fresh start, a chance to rebuild with someone who truly cared about me. In the end, the nightmare that had started with Emily's betrayal led me to a better place. A place where I finally found peace, and maybe even a future worth looking forward to. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.